Okay, the reading from Emmett Fox is Claiming Our Daily Bread. The common mistake, of course, is to suppose that a formal recognition of God is sufficient, or that talking about divine things is the same as possessing them. But this is exactly on par with supposing that looking at a tray of food or discussing the chemical composition of sundry foodstuffs is the same thing as actually eating a meal. It is this mistake that is responsible for the fact that people sometimes pray for a thing for years without any tangible result. If prayer is a force at all, it cannot be possible to pray without something happening. Pray regularly and quietly. Remember that in all mental work, effort or strain defeats itself. Then presently the realization will come. Another reason why the symbol of bread for the experience of the presence of God is such a telling one is that the act of eating food is essentially a thing that must be done for oneself. No one can assimilate food for another. In the same way, the realization of the presence of God is a thing that no one else can have for us. And from Psalm 107, verse 9, for he satisfies the longing heart and fills the hungry soul with goodness.
Thank you. Lori Kay,
Yes,
what's
sir.
the topic you're talking on today?
Surrender. What
Okay.
is it? How do we do it? It's a perfect reading that you just gave, Phyllis. That was gorgeous. So the talk tonight is it's really all about what Phyllis was saying, what she was quoting. So let me just get into it here, because when I first came to the spiritual path, what it meant to me, having met Mother and having felt that incredible wave of energy that she lives on, it just meant to me, God, take me. Kind of like, if you remember the movie Close Encounters, there's that point where they're on the top of that mountain and the keyboards take over the conversing with the aliens. And it's like, it seemed like that to me, like, okay, God, if I give me up, I don't want anything to do with me. I just want to be you. So that's what I thought when I first started. But there was a part to that that really made sense, and that I think is good to keep, that surrender is like surfing a wave. It is like riding a wave. It's not like having to be the wave. It's, I jump, God catches and moves me through. Little kids know this. Little kids do this automatically. Later on, I didn't know at all what it meant. The word surrender sounded to me like I had to give something of me up that I might need, and it sounded hard. It sounded very difficult to do. So I didn't really like the idea of surrender. And in the last 2 years, I have a different understanding and experience of it. And I experience surrender as allowing. But allowing what? Well, allowing my focus to be on the good, allowing my focus to be on the solution, allowing myself to really focus on the vision, so that I don't get caught in what Mike Dooley calls the cursed hows. I don't get caught in the details as much. I just focus on what it is that I know I am. And at this point in my development of my surrender, it's, here's who I know I am. This is the energy I insist on living in. And I set my sights for those things that I want, but I hold them lightly. So the more lightly I can hold them, the more easily the divine can move me along that wave. But what are you letting go of? What are we letting go of when we say we're surrendering? Definitions of things are so important to us. The way we frame a word will either keep us from something or lead us into something. And once upon a long time ago, I was in my late 20s. I went to a spiritual talk in someone's basement in Berkeley, California. And the person who was teaching was telling us about two different people. One, he said, was a crazy person who did weird, nutty things, and people just wanted to lock him up. He was disturbing to them. They didn't know why he was talking to himself, jumping and dancing around in the middle of the square for no reason. They just didn't understand what his deal was, and he scared them. But then there was also a saint that came to town that did exactly the same nutty things. And so what he said was, I don't really understand. He said, I'll be honest, I don't really know what the difference is between those two people. If they're doing the same things externally, what's the difference? And I love problem solving, or solution finding. And I thought about it as he went on with his talk. It kept going around in my head. What's the difference? And it popped in like an epiphany. And so I raised my hand, and he was in the middle of something I wasn't listening to. But he paused and he said, yes. And I said, I have an answer to that question, I think, that you asked before about the two men. He said, okay. I said, the spiritual guy, the saint knows that he's crazy. The crazy person doesn't know. And he went like this. He was like, okay, yeah, I agree. So children understand surrender, but they don't know that they know it. They're like the crazy person in that they don't know that they know it. They just are it. When at around 6, I'm told, we're activated into the place where we get so moistened by all of the messages of doubts and fears and all of the sort of social miasma that we all live in. Then starts the ability for us to walk a spiritual path to reclaiming with awareness, with consciousness, that which we did without awareness and consciousness and deliberation as children. Because our identity, such a powerful word, our identity is natural bliss. We're natural limitlessness. We are that. That's a phrase. I am that is a phrase I hear a lot around the Hindu sort of writings stuff. I am that, with every word capitalized. We are wealth. We are love, and we are forgiveness, and we are appreciation. We are all of that. So because the light is what truly keeps us going, it's the reason, its existence, because we live within it, is why we haven't managed to destroy ourselves as a species up to now. Because it's so much stronger than the dark. Even the crazy darkness we unintentionally but intentionally create, it keeps us from blowing ourselves up. So because it is that present and that powerful, when we focus on what Abraham Hicks calls the other end of the stick, instead of hate, we focus on forgiveness or love or something that's higher than hate, then we are inviting in our natural identity. We are reminding ourselves that we are that. And we are getting closer to living the way that we want to live, which is surrendered to our true identity. So what are we to do? Well, once upon a time, not too long ago, I sat in my chair across the room there, and I looked out the window, and I said to the window, I said, I give up. I give up. I can't, I don't have any answers. I don't have any. And it was such a relief. I wasn't trying to figure things out or strategize and I went into a state of bliss for a couple of weeks, really. I was just surrendered. I was riding that wave of energy, not feeling like I had to do things quickly like I always do. Um, Not feeling like I had to come up with the magic answer. Didn't have to do all of that. And yet, when I would just then shift my focus gently to something that I needed or wanted, it would come, because that's the nature of the energy of the divine. It's always, always out breath. It's always giving us. It's always giving. There is no in breath. It's all out breath. Here are my darling children. So this is both a moment of frustration and gratitude, quite often, because the frustration is, well, if you're always giving to me, where's the money? Where's the job? Where's the health? That's a very human sort of, oh God, how am I supposed, what do I have to do? How do I make this happen? But the gratitude for me comes from knowing that it is in my hands, that I have had experiences throughout my life where I've been like the little child. And that if I just focus on feeling that for a few minutes, my whole experience changes. I found something about what Phyllis was talking about. I think there was something about living in the moment, or that's what it reminded me of anyway. And it was some man named Ash Alves. I expect it's a man, I'm not sure. But it says, let go of your attachment to what you think should have happened. Surrender to what is, and trust that you're being guided towards something more profound. And that trust piece, that's the surrender piece. Just imagine that you're in a state of being where you are only thinking about how delicious your life is and how delicious it is to dream about where you want to move towards, and feeling what it's going to feel like when you get there. And you may not know that while you're thinking about how it'll feel when you get there, you're already there. It's God's parlor trick. There are some things that I wrote that are about what we let go. Very much what I have to keep letting go, because this practice that I'm talking about, it actually changes your mental, I don't know, the mental map. If you really, really commit to it, to feeling it, not just thinking it, but to really, really feeling and allowing yourself to know that when you feel it, it's powerful and it has brought you some change. And that if you do it more and more, whether that's meditation or visioning or sitting in appreciation of, wow, I'm so excited to see what happens next. If you can manage to be there. Sometimes that's very difficult. Talk about that in a second. But here are a few things that we do have to surrender. Impatience. Gotta surrender the impatience. But I want it now. I mean, that's me all over. I want it now. But the fact is, the more I want it, the more unhappy I am. If I'm just really grateful or appreciative or finding something else to focus on, then I can let go of some of that impatience. The next thing is control over details. So along with impatience comes, I don't see any proof yet. I don't see any proof yet. But let go of that, because you may find that the thing that you're moving towards is not the thing that is best for you. You may find that you get shifted into a different mode, shifted into a different direction. I'm wondering right now if my business is going to end up being my business, or if I'm going to do something else. And being okay with being shifted like that, that's something to be able to let go of. The next thing to give up, to surrender, is reality. Your belief in reality as being the only reality. It ain't. I love what Abraham Hicks says about it. Abraham says, the reality that we see right here and now is old news. It's like gum that's already been chewed. We already created this, and we can create anew. We are, by default, natural creators. And we can either do it unconsciously, which most do, because most don't know yet how to create like that. Or we can create a new reality, not get stuck in fighting with something that is old news. So letting go of fighting with what you've got, and instead turning your vision towards what makes you feel better. I think for the next one, this one I think is really profound. I think we've been taught to be addicted to trouble, addicted to our suffering, addicted to believing there's a pony under all that horse crap. I think we've been really conditioned to think that there are answers in finding out what is wrong, when it's easy to say what's wrong. How do you feel? I feel trapped. I feel self-doubt. I feel this, I feel that. What would you rather feel? Well, I'd rather feel free. I'd rather feel confident and free. So what are the things that make you feel free and confident? Oh, well, I remember that situation and this thing, and I love feeling that. And as you feel it, you are there. You have moved away from the solid end of the stick of suffering and into allowing answers to come in. It's funny that suffering is like something that we turn to a lot, and it makes us feel safe. It's such a familiar spot. It's a really familiar spot, but one of the things that surrender requires is that you give up your normal places of security and safety. Surrender is the place of both the greatest and the least safety. It is the place of the greatest safety when you're actually riding the top of the wave. Really safe. There's nothing that can harm you there. That's God all the way. When you're riding those waves and experiencing your life as the sailboat, like God is the sailboat, and you have the tiller to say, here's the direction I'm looking at. But in a sailboat, if you've ever been in one, it doesn't go in a straight line. So let God do this, which sailboats do. But surrender is the place of the least safety when we try to think it instead of feel it. Because when I think of surrender as I want to be more godlike, which is what I thought of it earlier in my life, then I'm going to should on myself. I'm going to beat myself up for not being patient enough, not being kind enough, not being perfect enough. So surrender is something to experience, not to think about. One thing I wanted to talk about with what I had said about if you can get into a place of surrender or get into a place where you can move upwards, that's great. But what if you're in a place of great suffering? What do you do then? And if you can surrender the idea that you're supposed to be a specific thing, a specific feeling, if you can understand that there is a ladder, an emotional ladder. The very bottom is depression and hopelessness. The middle is boredom. So it comes in kind of like this, and boredom is right here. And then the top part is all the things like you're moving up the scale to joy and bliss and appreciation, things like that. You can't get to the upper rung from down below. You have to come up to the middle. You have to get your nervous system and your emotional setting to the middle, and then you can start to access the higher ones. Here's why I'm telling you this. If you're in deep depression, if you're in deep pain, if you're in deep doo-doo of any kind, if you move from hopelessness and depression to anger, don't judge the anger. You have just surrendered the things that go under anger all the way down to depression. You have risen. You haven't risen as much as you want to yet, but the light, the amount of light that it takes to do that, it just flows in when you just do a little bit of shifting. So in that way, you do surrender. You surrender those darknesses, and they never come back in exactly that way again. Keep working it so much faster than like 11 years of therapy, like I did. I'm not putting down therapy. I love it. But I'm just saying there's ways to do this without that if you need to or want to. So the last thing I want to say, I just want to share with you a couple of quotes. One is from Gail Sheehy. She said, "Growth demands a temporary surrender of security." And the other one is from a guy named Mark Nepo, which says, "Surrender is like a fish finding the current and going with it."
Thank you. Comments? Thoughts? Yes, Ellie.
Lori, I loved your talk about what surrender is. You put it where surrender was a physical thought, something physically that we can do instead of a linear thought of not knowing what surrender looks like. Because sometimes we look at surrender going, okay, what does that look like? Because we want something that we can label, that we can touch, that we can see and understand. And the word surrender usually doesn't give that. So you explained it in a way where I could physically see what surrender was. And when you were talking about, surrender, what came to me was, surrender is where belief comes in. Where what I mean by that is belief is a substance of what is expected, the proof of what is not seen. So we have to have a little bit of faith or belief in surrendering, knowing that there's something that's expected and the proof isn't there yet.
So it sounds like you said two different things, and I appreciate them both very much. The first was, thank you for giving us a concrete thing to look at, which is always what I'm looking for, because if I can't apply it, it means nothing to me. It's just a nice story. And the other thing that you said was something that sounded more to me like about faith. Did I get that right? More like just believing that something will come.
Yes, but we have
Okay.
to have both of those. We have to be able to surrender, but yet the belief in that process that something good is going to happen, something good is expected, but it isn't seen yet, or yet it isn't seen yet.
Thanks. I love the way you put all of that. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, God, for bringing us together, for enabling us to grow together, to explore your being and our relationship with you together. Thank you for helping us become wiser this evening, to share with each other of ourselves. to prepare us for surfing to the next step in our own walk in you and with you. We say thank you for all the good you've given, all the good you're preparing for us, all the miracles that one way or another we will be involved in. We say thank you, thank you, thank you for all the good you've given us and all the love and all that is coming. Amen.